On Windows and Linux, swap files are used for the same purpose. If your computer has, for example, 3 GB of RAM, it means that 3 GB of data can be loaded into its memory at a given time. It's not that much, because we're running an operating system and various applications at the same time. The number of data can easily exceed 3 GB. In such cases, the operating system saves currently unused information on the disk to free up primary storage memory. That's exactly what the swap files are used for. In the case of Windows, the swap file is typically located in the C drive, and it's called page file sys. The Linux swap file is usually created in a dedicated partition. This partition is invisible to the user, and it's pinned to a special directory in your operating system, from where it can be accessed by the system. Special file system has to be created on that partition, which is called the swap, and it's used only for that purpose. That file system only allows for temporary storage of the operating system's primary memory. This partition is always created automatically by the installer. Its size is adjusted automatically, and for a modern system, the partition is approximately 2 GB large. In the past, when primary storage memory was limited, systems followed the principle that swap files should be more or less the size of RAM, or 2 times larger. In the present day, when most computers have more than 2 GB of primary storage, situations in which the swap memory is larger than 2 to 4 GB are very rare, simply because there is no need to have more space. And it would be a shame to waste disk space. Theoretically, it's possible to create a swap partition on the same basis as in Windows, so simply as a file. However, for performance reasons, such solutions are not used. Though, like with everything else in Linux, you can do it if you want to. Just like Windows, Linux has some special folders, knowledge of which is quite important, because that's where our applications, system settings, and things like that are stored. For example, we have the Windows directory in which the whole operating system is installed. The program files in Program x86 folders contain 32 and 64-bit programs respectively. There's also a users folder. The data of the individual users is kept there. One more note: in Linux, you will never meet strange tricks that Windows uses. If a directory has a particular name, each application will see that exact name. No translation tricks are used, like in Windows, where the physical disk contains the users and program files directories, and the shell translates their names appropriately to the language used by the system. This dissonance is visible when, for example, we're using applications written in Java, which cannot see some directories when providing their translated names, because the directory does not exist on the disk physically. In Linux, there are no such situations. As I mentioned earlier, / is the root directory, the equivalent of C in Windows. All other folders, disks, devices are pinned onto the specific structure relative to this directory. The / root directory is the home directory of the user who has administrative rights, and it's always called that way. The / home directory is a standard directory in which home directories of other users are placed. For example, a user named Bob will get the home directory /home/Bob. The /dev directory is the directory that contains the previously mentioned device files. This directory should not be modified manually in any way, as it may disturb the stability of the operating system. The /etc directory is the directory where you would normally store the entire configuration of the system, global application settings, and other important configuration files that are important for the system. The /boot directory contains files that comprise the operating system's kernel. In fact, this directory is only needed during system startup. That's why some distributions hide that directory from the user. In other words, unmount it right after booting, when the kernel is no longer needed, because it's been loaded into the primary memory. The /lib and /lib64 directories are respectively 32 and 64-bit shared libraries, counterparts of the DLLs on Windows. Catalogs /bin, /sbin, /usr/bin contain the executable file of our applications. So, if we're looking for some application, it will almost certainly be stored in one of these three folders. The /var directory is quite important, as it contains all the temporary application files, such as log files, and files that store the number by which a specific processor application can be found. It also contains files allowing for communication between various types of applications. It's also the place where emails and event logs are stored, in the case of mail server systems. The /mnt directory is the standard non-removable disk storage location. So for example, hard disks that usually are not moved from the system. Analogically, the /media directory is used to mount removable media, all kinds of CD-ROMs, pen drives, external drives. Things of that kind will usually appear as subdirectories of /media.